The box was unassuming, tucked away in the deepest corner of the attic, covered in a thick film of dust and forgotten memories. It was one of several I was clearing out after a pipe burst, a mundane task on a Saturday afternoon. Most contained old holiday decorations or my childhood drawings, but this one was different. It was heavier, filled with papers. Inside, beneath a layer of my father's old tax returns, I found a series of manila envelopes. Curiosity got the better of me. I opened one. It was a bank statement for an account I didn't recognize under my parents' names, and as I scanned the transaction history, my blood ran cold. Tuition payments, thousands of dollars paid every semester to the state university, car payments for a brand new sedan, all for my brother, Liam. It was all there, a secret history written in debits and credits, a detailed ledger of a lie I had been living for the past 10 years. The defining conversation of my young adult life happened when I was 18, sitting at the same kitchen table where we'd had thousands of family dinners. I had just been accepted into my dream university, a private arts college, and I was ecstatic. I had worked hard, my grades were excellent, and I assumed my parents, who had always preached the value of education, would be as thrilled as I was. But when I brought up the topic of financial aid and their potential contribution, the mood shifted. My father cleared his throat and launched into a well-rehearsed speech about the importance of self-reliance. He told me that they had decided not to fund my college education because they believed it was crucial for me to learn the value of a dollar and build character by paying my own way. My mother chimed in, her voice soft but firm, adding that taking on debt and working my way through school would be a formative experience, one that would make me stronger and more appreciative of my degree in the long run. They painted it as a lesson in character, a gift of grit and independence. My brother Liam, who was 2 years younger and still in high school, sat there silently, avoiding my gaze. I was devastated, confused, and deeply humiliated. I argued, I pleaded, I showed them my acceptance letter, the scholarship I had been offered that only covered a fraction of the cost, but their decision was final. It was their philosophy, they said, a matter of principle. They loved me, but they would not be paying. And so my path was set. I deferred my admission to the arts college, a dream that immediately felt out of reach. Instead, I enrolled in a local community college, taking classes at night while working full-time during the day at a hardware store. My life became a grueling cycle of stocking shelves, running a cash register, studying until the early hours of the morning, and collapsing into bed, too tired to even dream. I was constantly exhausted, perpetually stressed about money, watching my friends go off to their universities, living the life I was supposed to have. But I swallowed my bitterness and pushed forward, fueled by my parents' lesson. I was building character. I was learning the value of a dollar. 2 years later, it was Liam's turn. He had never been a particularly dedicated student. His grades were average, his ambitions vague. He got accepted into the large state university, a good school, but not a particularly competitive one. I remember the day he got his acceptance letter. There was no big family meeting, no solemn speech about self-reliance. My parents just seemed quietly pleased. When I asked Liam how he planned to pay for it, he just shrugged and said, "I'll figure it out. Student loans, I guess." It seemed to be a non-issue, a detail that was being handled. I felt a pang of jealousy, but I pushed it down, assuming he was about to embark on the same grueling journey I was on. Over the next 4 years, I watched Liam's college experience unfold from a distance, mostly through his social media posts. His life seemed to be a caricature of the classic American university experience. Photos of him at football games, at fraternity parties, on spring break trips to Cancun. He never seemed to be working. I asked my mom once how he was managing it all, and she just said that Liam was very resourceful with his loan money. I accepted the explanation, albeit with a growing sense of unease. My own college experience consisted of fluorescent-lit classrooms at 9 p.m. and lukewarm coffee from a vending machine. The contrast was stark, but I attributed it to our different choices, our different priorities. I was the serious one. He was the social one. He got a car his sophomore year, a new Honda Civic. It was a complete surprise. When I asked my parents about it, they claimed his grandfather, who had passed away years ago, had left a small, separate trust fund specifically for Liam, his favorite grandchild. The story was so specific, so out of the blue, that it felt odd, but what could I say? It wasn't my place to question it, so I congratulated my brother, trying to sound genuine, while my own 10-year-old car was back in the shop for the third time that year. I was still paying my own way, building my character, while Liam seemed to be sailing through life on a series of fortunate and convenient windfalls. After I finally graduated with my associate's degree, I couldn't afford to transfer to a 4-year university. The debt I had already accumulated from 2 years of community college was a heavy weight. Instead, I took a better job at a construction supply company, working in the back office. The pay was better, but it was a soul-crushing, monotonous job. It had nothing to do with the art and design I had once dreamed of. I was officially a working adult, a responsible, self-reliant man. I had done exactly what my parents had wanted. I had learned the value of $1 so well that I was now counting every single one, just to make ends meet. Liam, on the other hand, graduated from the state university with a degree in communications and no debt. He told everyone he had been meticulous with his student loans and had worked odd jobs to pay them off as he went. My parents beamed with pride at his graduation party. My father gave a speech, lauding Liam's hard work and financial prudence. I stood at the back of the room listening to this fiction, a bitter taste in my mouth. It didn't add up. The parties, the car, the lack of any discernible employment. How could he have graduated debt-free? But I buried my doubts, telling myself it was just my own jealousy, my own resentment at the different paths our lives had taken. The lie held for years, a solid, invisible wall between me and the truth. Our family dynamic was set. I was the stable, hard-working, but ultimately unexciting son. Liam was the charming, charismatic son who, despite a few youthful stumbles, had made good. My parents treated us differently. Their conversations with me were about practical things: my job, my car repairs, my budget. Their conversations with Liam were about his exciting new job at a marketing firm, his trips, his social life. They had invested in his story, and they were proud of the return. My story, one of hard-won, unglamorous survival, was of little interest to them. Then came the burst pipe in their attic, a random, mundane household disaster that would, in the end, blow up my entire world. My father called me to help, knowing I was the more practical son, the one who knew how to handle a wrench. I spent the weekend up there in the dusty heat, replacing the damaged section of pipe and helping to clear out the boxes of water-damaged belongings. It was during that cleanup that I found the box of old financial records, the box that contained the truth, the box that my parents had forgotten existed. Sitting there on the dusty floor of the attic, surrounded by the debris of my family's past, I read through the statements. It wasn't just the tuition payments or the car loan. It was everything. A monthly stipend, labeled living expenses, payments for his fraternity dues, a significant withdrawal with the memo, spring break. They hadn't just helped him. They had funded his entire life. They had paid for every party, every trip, every book. They had given him a 4-year, all-expenses-paid vacation while I was working double shifts and living on ramen noodles to pay for a single accounting class. The principle they had preached to me, the character-building power of self-reliance, was a complete and utter sham. It was a philosophy they had invented just for me. It was a convenient excuse to deny me the same support they were secretly showering on my brother. They hadn't wanted me to build character. They had simply decided that Liam's comfort and happiness were a higher priority than my own. They had one college-fund child, and it wasn't me. My path of struggle hadn't been a noble lesson. It had been a financial necessity created by their choice to fund his easy ride. I felt a profound sense of foolishness wash over me. I had spent the last decade of my life believing in a lie that had shaped my choices, my career, my entire sense of self. I had prided myself on my independence, on the fact that I had made it on my own. But it was a hollow victory. My independence hadn't been a choice. It had been a mandate. And while I was struggling, they were watching, knowing they could have helped, but choosing not to, because their resources were already allocated to their favored son. The betrayal wasn't just about the money. It was about the years of silent deception. I walked down from the attic, the bank statements clutched in my hand. My parents were in the living room watching television. I stood in the doorway, silent, until my mother noticed me. She saw the papers in my hand, and her smile faltered. She knew in that instant that the game was up. I didn't say anything. I just laid the statements on the coffee table in front of them. My father picked one up, looked at it, and then at me. The color drained from his face. For the first time in my life, I saw him at a complete loss for words. My mother was the first to speak, her voice a weak, trembling whisper. She tried to explain. She said they didn't want to burden me. that they knew I was so good at handling things on my own. She said Liam needed the help more, that he wasn't as naturally responsible as I was. It was the same twisted logic they had always used. The idea that my competence was a reason to neglect me, and his incompetence was a reason to coddle him. My strength was my punishment. His weakness was his reward. My father eventually found his voice. He tried to take a different tack, attempting to appeal to my sense of logic. He said it was a simple investment strategy. They had seen Liam as a higher risk, higher reward asset. He needed more upfront capital to get started, whereas I was a blue chip stock, steady and reliable on my own. The fact that he was reducing his own sons to financial instruments, to items in a portfolio, was the most dehumanizing thing I had ever heard. He wasn't a father talking to his son. He was a fund manager explaining a cold, calculated decision. I asked them one question: why lie about it? My mother started to cry, saying they didn't want to hurt my feelings, that they thought it was kinder to keep it a secret. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. They thought 10 years of deception was kinder than a single honest conversation. They hadn't been protecting my feelings. They had been protecting themselves from the discomfort of having to justify their blatant favoritism, from having to look their less loved son in the eye and admit the truth. Their secrecy wasn't an act of kindness, it was an act of profound cowardice. I walked out of their house that day and didn't look back. I didn't yell, I didn't scream. I was beyond that. I was in a state of cold, quiet shock. I drove to my small, rented apartment, the one I could barely afford, and I sat on my second-hand couch. The bank statement spread out on my coffee table like the wreckage of a plane crash. My entire past, my entire understanding of my family and my place in it, had been a lie. I was not the self-made man I thought I was. I was the son who had been left behind, the one deemed unworthy of the investment. The following weeks were a blur of anger and disillusionment. I called Liam. I told him I knew everything. His reaction was not what I expected. He wasn't defensive or apologetic. He was genuinely confused. "I thought you knew," he said, his voice full of a naive sincerity. I just assumed they were helping you out in other ways. I never asked." He had been so wrapped up in his own charmed life, so accustomed to having things handed to him, that it had never even occurred to him to question it. He wasn't malicious. He was just a product of their lifelong favoritism, a golden child so blinded by his own light that he couldn't see the shadows where I was living. His obliviousness was, in some ways, more infuriating than a direct lie would have been. It proved how little I factored into his thoughts, how little I mattered in the grand scheme of our family. He was not my co-conspirator. I was simply an irrelevant detail in his life story. He offered to talk to Mom and Dad, to sort things out, as if this were a simple misunderstanding that could be cleared up with a phone call. He didn't understand the depth of the betrayal. He didn't understand that he was the living, breathing embodiment of it. Our relationship, already distant, was now irreparably broken. The financial impact of their decision was staggering when I actually sat down and calculated it. The cost of his tuition, his car, his living expenses, it was a sum that would have changed my life. It would have meant graduating from my dream college without debt. It would have meant a career in a field I was passionate about. It would have meant a down payment on a home. It was the future I was supposed to have, the future I had earned, and it had been given to him, freely and secretly, simply because he was him and I was me. The unfairness of it was a physical weight, a constant pressure behind my eyes. I cut off all contact with my parents. I didn't answer their calls. I returned their letters, unopened. I could not find a way to reconcile the parents I thought I had, the ones who taught me about honesty and hard work, with the people who had so systematically deceived me. They had created a two-tiered family with two different sets of rules, and I was refusing to play their game anymore. The silence was painful, a constant reminder of the family I had lost, but the alternative, pretending that everything was okay, was unthinkable. I became obsessed with the idea of fairness. I would find myself in everyday situations, watching people, and wondering about the invisible systems of favoritism that governed their lives. The world, which had once seemed like a place of opportunity, now looked like a rigged system, a series of locked doors and secret handshakes. My parents' betrayal had colored my entire worldview, turning me into a cynic. I had learned the value of $1, all right. I had learned that its value was entirely dependent on who you were and who your parents wanted you to be. The anger eventually began to fade, replaced by a profound and weary sadness. A sadness for the relationship I thought I had with my parents. A sadness for the bond I never really had with my brother. A sadness for the young, optimistic man I had been. The one who believed that effort and integrity were all that mattered. He was gone, and I wasn't sure I liked the person who was left in his place. This hard, suspicious, and lonely man who saw deceit in every corner. I started therapy. It was an expense I couldn't really afford, but I knew it was a necessity. I needed someone to help me unpack the years of lies, to help me separate my own worth from my parents' valuation of me. My therapist helped me understand that their favoritism wasn't a reflection of my inadequacy, but of their own issues. It didn't make the pain go away, but it helped me to place it in a different context. It wasn't my fault, and realizing that, truly internalizing it, was the first step toward healing. I had to redefine my concept of success. For years, I had measured my life against the one I should have had, the one Liam was living. It was a comparison that would always leave me feeling inadequate. I had to learn to measure my life by a different metric, not by the degrees I didn't have or the houses I didn't own, but by my own resilience. I had survived. I had made a life for myself, against the odds, with no help, and there was a quiet, fierce pride in that. My success wasn't about what I had, but about what I had overcome. I made a conscious decision to stop punishing myself for not being in a creative field. I started taking a weekend painting class. It was a small act of rebellion, a way to reclaim a part of the dream they had forced me to abandon. I wasn't very good, but that wasn't the point. The point was the act of creation, of doing something for the pure joy of it, not because it was practical or responsible. It was a way of nurturing the part of me that their character-building lesson had tried to starve. Liam and I see each other at family holidays now, at the homes of aunts and uncles who don't know the full story. The interactions are awkward, strained. We are polite strangers, sharing a history that we each remember in a completely different way. He sees our past as a story of two brothers who took different paths. I see it as a story of a prince and a pauper, living in the same castle with one of them never realizing the other was being fed scraps. There is a chasm between our realities that can never be bridged. My parents are getting older. They try to reach out more, sending birthday cards with checks inside, as if the money they denied me then can be replaced with these small, belated gestures. I cash the checks, not out of forgiveness, but out of a cold sense of justice. It is a minuscule fraction of what they owe me, a debt that can never be truly repaid. But it is a symbolic acknowledgement, however small, of the financial wrong they committed. I use the money to pay for my therapy and my art supplies. I am writing this on a forum today because I found the box again. I'm helping my parents pack up their house. They're downsizing. They asked me to help. Another appeal to the responsible son they still see when they look at me. And in the attic, I came across that same box of financial records. I sat there for a long time, holding the statements in my hand. The paper felt different now. It no longer felt like an indictment of my worth. It felt like a historical document, the record of a past that is no longer my present. The pain was still there, a dull ache, but it was no longer a gaping wound. I will never have the easy, confident relationship with the world that my brother has. My path will always be harder. I will always have to work twice as hard to get half as far. That is the permanent, tangible legacy of my parents' decision. But I have also gained something. I have gained a strength I never knew I had. I have gained a deep and abiding empathy for others who struggle, and I have gained a clear-eyed understanding of the world, unclouded by the comforting illusions of fairness that my brother still enjoys. The most difficult thing to accept is that my parents do love me. I see it in their worried glances, in their awkward attempts to reconnect. But their love is flawed, and it is unequal. They love me, but they love him more, or perhaps just in a way that is more tangible, more supportive. They saw his needs as more pressing, his potential as more fragile and in need of nurturing. They saw me as strong enough to survive on my own, and in a twisted way, their neglect was a backhanded compliment, but it is a compliment I would have gladly lived without. I am learning to build my own family, a family of friends, of chosen connections, built on a foundation of mutual respect and honesty. A family where support is not a limited resource to be allocated to the neediest member, but an abundant currency, freely given and received. A family where no one is asked to build their character through unnecessary hardship, and where everyone's dreams are considered a worthy investment. I am still angry sometimes. The injustice of it all can still rise up and choke me, but the anger no longer consumes me. It is a part of my story, but it is not the whole story. My story is also about the quiet satisfaction of paying my own bills. It is about the small joy of creating a painting, just for myself. It is about the slow, difficult process of learning to trust again. It is about becoming my own man, not the man my parents wanted me to be, but the man I have forged in the fire of their betrayal. So, to anyone out there who has been the character-building child, the one who was taught self-reliance while a sibling was taught dependency, know this: your strength is real. Your resilience is your own. Do not let their narrative define you. Their philosophy was not a lesson, it was an excuse. Your worth is not determined by their lack of investment. Build your own future, fund your own dreams, and know that your success, however quiet or humble, is a testament to a strength they were too blind to see, and a character they had no hand in building. I am putting the bank statements back in the box. I am taping it shut. I am leaving it in the attic of a house that is no longer theirs, to be dealt with by the new owners. It is a part of their history, not mine. My history is what I am building now, every day. It is a less glamorous story than my brother's, with no exotic trips or fancy cars. But it is a true story, and it is a story that I am, finally, beginning to be proud of. I have learned the value of $1, but I have also learned the value of myself, and that is a lesson they could never have taught me. The path of the unfavored child is a lonely one. You spend your life feeling like you are on the outside of your own family, looking in through a window at a warmth you are not invited to share. You learn to be self-sufficient because you have no other choice. You learn to be resilient because you are constantly being tested. You become the adult in the room, even when you are still a child, because someone has to be responsible. And it is clear that it will not be your sibling nor your parents who enable them. This dynamic doesn't end in childhood. It calcifies. It becomes the bedrock of the family structure. The roles are set. The favored child can fail repeatedly, make disastrous mistakes, and they will always be bailed out, their actions excused as youthful indiscretions or the product of a sensitive nature. The unfavored child is allowed no such luxury. A single misstep is seen as a confirmation of some inherent flaw, a failure of the self-reliance that was so forcefully instilled. The double standard is not just a rule, it is the very air you breathe. The real damage is not the lack of money, it is the constant, subtle erosion of your self-worth. You start to internalize their narrative. You start to believe that you are less deserving of help, of comfort, of unconditional love. You start to see your own needs as burdens, your own desires as selfish. You learn to make yourself small, to ask for nothing, to expect nothing. And in doing so, you become the perfect, low-maintenance child, reinforcing their belief that you don't need their help, creating a vicious, self-fulfilling prophecy of neglect. Breaking free from that mindset is the hardest work I have ever done. It is a daily battle against a lifetime of conditioning. It is learning to say, "I need help," without feeling shame. It is learning to accept a kindness from a friend without feeling like I am imposing. It is learning that I am worthy of support, not because I am weak or irresponsible, but simply because I am human. It is a slow, painful unlearning of the toxic lessons my family taught me. The relationship with my parents now is one of careful, managed distance. We speak on birthdays and holidays. The conversations are polite, superficial, and deeply sad. They are a performance, a pantomime of a family that no longer exists in any meaningful way. They will never acknowledge the depth of their betrayal, and I will never be able to forget it. We are locked in a permanent stalemate of unspoken truths and unforgivable actions. It is a cold and empty peace, but it is the only peace we have. I sometimes wonder if they are happy, if their investment in Liam has paid off in the way they hoped. He is successful, yes. He has a good job, a nice apartment. But he is also a man in his 30s who still calls his mother to handle his bills and his father to negotiate his salary. They did not build his character. They built a beautiful, hollow shell. They protected him from the world so thoroughly that he is now incapable of navigating it without them. Their greatest success is also their greatest failure. In a strange twist of fate, my struggle has made me more capable than he will ever be. I can budget. I can fix a leaky faucet. I can negotiate with a difficult landlord. I can endure hardship. I can stand on my own 2 feet. They forced me to learn the skills they neglected to teach him. They accidentally gave me the tools for true independence, even as they denied me the resources. It is a bitter irony, but it is an irony that I am learning to appreciate. I am the man my father claimed he wanted to raise, but I became that man in spite of him, not because of him. My art has become my sanctuary. My small apartment is filled with my canvases. They are not masterpieces. They are raw, emotional, and full of the anger and sadness I have carried for so long. But they are also full of a fierce, vibrant energy. They are a testament to my survival. They are the voice I did not have when I was 18, sitting at that kitchen table. They are my truth, rendered in color and texture. And in creating them, I am slowly, painstakingly, painting myself back into existence. The future is still uncertain. The financial hole I am in is deep, and it will take many more years of hard work to climb out. But for the first time, I don't feel like I am climbing alone. I have my chosen family of friends. I have my art, and I have a hard-won sense of my own worth. I am no longer waiting for my parents' approval or my brother's acknowledgement. I am my own man, and my value is not up for their debate. It is a fact, solid and unchangeable, that I am learning to build my life upon. The box of old papers sits in a landfill somewhere, buried under the refuse of a city, but its contents are forever etched in my memory. They are a map of my past, a map of a place I will never return to. My new map is one I am drawing myself, day by day. It is a map of a different kind of territory, one where the landmarks are not houses or bank accounts, but small victories of resilience and quiet acts of self-love. It is a harder country to navigate, but it is my country. And for the first time, I feel like I am finally home. The journey of the unfavored child is to learn how to reparent yourself. You must learn to give yourself the validation you were denied. You must learn to set the boundaries that were never set for you. You must learn to champion your own cause, to be your own advocate, because you have learned the hard way that no one else will. It is a lonely and difficult task, but it is also a profoundly empowering one. You are not just surviving. You are creating yourself anew from the ashes of your old family's expectations. I do not hate my brother. I pity him. He will never know the deep satisfaction of achieving something on his own. He will never know the strength that is forged in adversity. He will live his entire life on a stage that was built and paid for by others, a golden prince in a gilded cage. He has everything, and therefore, he has nothing. I have nothing, and therefore, I have the potential for everything. And I would not trade my path for his, not for all the money in the world. My struggle has been a harsh teacher, but it has taught me lessons he will never have the opportunity to learn. My father's lesson about building character was a lie, but I ended up learning it anyway, just not in the way he intended. My character was not built by the hardship itself, but by my response to the injustice of it. My character was built in the moments I chose to get up after being knocked down. It was built in the moments I chose integrity over bitterness. It was built in the moments I chose to forgive, not for them, but for me. I built my own character, with no help from him. And it is a character that is stronger, more resilient, and more compassionate than he could have ever imagined. I am at peace with my story. It is a part of who I am, but it is not all of who I am. I am more than the sum of my grievances. I am a painter. I am a good friend. I am a hard worker. I am a survivor. My parents may have written the first chapter of my adult life, but I am the one who gets to write the rest. And I intend to make it a story worth reading. A story of a man who was left with nothing, and who, against all odds, managed to build a life of quiet, unshakable dignity